Hi there, everyone. Welcome to our program on expanded opportunities for peripheral neuropathy researchers for 2023. My name is Lindsay Colbert. I'm the Executive Director of the Foundation for Peripheral Neuropathy, and I just wanted to thank you again for joining us today. Before we go ahead and get started, just a few logistical matters. We are recording this presentation. The recording link will be emailed to you probably within the next day or so, and we're also going to have it uploaded on the Foundation for Peripheral Neuropathy's website. If you have any questions at all during this program, I encourage you to submit your questions through the questions box in the dashboard. We're going to try to answer as many and all of the questions that are pertinent to this topic at the end of the presentation, so feel free to just submit those questions and we'll go ahead and address them at the end. At any time, if you're having any trouble hearing us or having trouble with the audio on your computer, just know that you can dial in from your phone. Those dial-in instructions can be found in the same email that you used to log in today. And now I'm pleased to present and introduce our guest speaker today, Dr. Cecilia Dupecher. She currently serves as the Program Manager for the Peer-Reviewed Medical Research Program, also known as the PRMRP, within the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Programs, U.S. Army Medical Research and Development Command. Dr. Dupecher provides strategic coordination for the execution and management of PRMRP congressional appropriation. As the program manager, she is responsible for executing the PRMRP's entire program life cycle, including investment strategy, development of funding opportunities, overseeing review of research proposals, and analysis of PRMRP's accomplishment. At this time, I'm going to turn it over for her program, and thank you again for participating. Cecilia.
Hi, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here today, so thank you so much for attending. Like Lindsay said, I'm going to present some funding opportunities that we have available for PRMRP. I hope that this webinar is useful to you, and you can always feel free to reach out to me with questions if you have some, either at the end of the Q&A or you can reach out to me directly. Next slide, please. So in this webinar, we're going to give you an overview of CDMRP, the organization where PRMRP stands in. I'm going to talk a little bit about our program cycle and the review process. That's very important for the review of proposals that we're going to receive. So it's good to have a good understanding of how the cycle works. Then I'm going to talk about specifics about PRMRP, because each program at CDMRP is different. So I'm going to give you some pointers as to what is important for PRMRP, our funding opportunities and how to apply to them. And I'm going to close off with additional resources and tips and strategies for success. So we always like to start a presentation with the vision and mission of our organization. Our vision is really to transform healthcare through innovative and impactful research. And I'd like to emphasize these two words, innovative and impactful. This is something that you'll hear throughout this presentation, and it really is what differentiates us from other funding organizations. And we do that by responsibly managing collaborative research that discovers, develops, and delivers healthcare solutions to service members, veterans, and the American public. And again, this is a very broad audience, service members, veterans, and the American public, and it's really meant to be inclusive of many of the research that we are able to fund. Next slide, please. This is what we call the star graph for PRMRP, for CDMRP. It is the who, the what, the where, and the how. So we started by Congress in 1992. Really, it was a result of grassroots efforts, people that went, that lobbied, that went to the Hill to bat for funds. And we started off with a breast cancer program. So those were the advocacies that first stood up the organization. That was our first program, and we have steadily grown since then. We aim to fund innovative and impactful biomedical research. We are very comfortable with risks, so we aim to fund research that probably other funding organizations would not venture to fund. And different than the perception that we have from the public, really, we can fund research that's conducted throughout the world, not just the United States. International research and international performing organizations are very welcome to apply. And how we do this, it's what our director likes to call our secret sauce. It's through the two-tier review process. And that involves scientists, clinicians, and consumers. And this is what I'm going to spend the majority of this presentation talking about. Next slide. So here are some of the hallmarks of our organization. I think it's important to understand what we stand for, how we conduct our business once you're applying for us. The most important thing is that Congress adds targeted research funds to the DoD budget. So we do not solicit these funds. It's not in the president's budget. These funds are added at the end by Congress. We like to fund high impact, high innovative research, like I mentioned before, that other funding organizations might feel that it's a little bit too risky to invest in. We aim to avoid duplication. We're very proud of the platform that we have. We have a collaboration with the VA, a collaboration with the NIH, and we aim to fund proposals that are not duplicative, right? So this is very big for us. We will, during negotiations, look at the proposals, see if there is any duplication of funds, and we will not fund proposals that are duplicative, either in the scientific, even if there's scientific overlap, or even budgetary overlap. This is an equal opportunity program, an equal opportunity organization. This is very important. Our funding opportunities, they're publicly announced and competed. So anyone can apply. You don't need to be part of a special group, have a special in. And with that, I will just add that different than the NIH, we can't work with performers to tailor their proposals to our solicitations. This is something, like I said, we try to keep transparency, and we are not, we avoid providing any competitive advantage to anybody that's eligible to apply to us. We follow the National Academy of Medicine recommended model for application review. This was suggested and recommended to us once the organization stood up, and we have followed that since then, which involves our two-tier review process and the inclusions of consumers in all levels of review. With that, we can say that consumers are really the true north of CDMRP. They participate throughout the process, and they are the foundations of our program. So how your proposal impacts them and directly impacts them is very important. Keep in mind that they will have an equal vote as scientist reviewers for your proposals and even the programmatic panel. So they are really why this organization stands. These are the folks that go to the hill to bat for the funds. So we aim to fund research that not only advances science, but also impacts patients. With the flexibility of the way that the funds are appropriated to us, we can adapt each program's vision and investment strategy very easily and very rapidly. So if there's a new need in the field, we are able to release funding opportunities that target that. Like I said, we have funding flexibility. So one of the things that's important, that's really appealing to many investigators, is that our funds are obligated upfront. So we do not have limited out-year budget commitments. It's with the budget that you submit to us with your proposal, that's what's going to be funded. It will be funded in its entirety. So there are no risk of having your funds cut throughout the continuation of your project. With that, we do not have a mechanism, because we are here to meet congressional intent. We do not have a mechanism to fund continued funding. So every proposal is going to be a new proposal. For my program, for instance, the topic areas vary annually, so we can't put out a mechanism just like the NIH. That's just a continuation of what you had been previously funded by us. And again, with our two-tier review process, we do not have a pay line. Our funding recommendations, they are based on portfolio composition. We have a second panel that's composed of individuals that's different than the peer review panel, and they are the ones that are going to be looking at all the proposals and looking at relative impact, technical merit of those proposals based on the pool of the best meritorious proposals that we receive. We are very transparent and accountable to our stakeholders. This is something that, again, it's one of the hallmarks of the organization. Everything that we have funded is on our website. Our website is very comprehensive. I do admit sometimes it can be a little bit clunky. It takes us a while to update, but this is something that whatever we have funded, you have access to that. So I do encourage you to take a look at previously funded proposals. They're on our website, so you can see the type of research that has been funded by us. And lastly, we have the lowest management cost of all funding organizations. This is something that we're very proud of because this allows us to maximize the dollars that we are able to invest in research. Next slide, please. So like I said, CDMRP is Congressionally Directed Medical Research Programs. We don't have only this program, PRMRP, we have several other programs. This is a snapshot of the FY23 appropriation. We received 35 programs this fiscal year. And what I have highlighted there is the peer review medical research program. And you can see we have 370 million. It is the largest program of the organization, but it's also the program that has the majority of topic areas. And just peer-reviewed medical and peer-reviewed cancer, they're the only two programs that have topic areas that are assigned to us by Congress, but this is very important, and I will explain this in detail in further slides. Next slide. All right, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about the cycle and how we do the review of our proposals, all the way starting from when we release our funding opportunities and to award closeout. I'm going to focus much more on the left side because it's more pertinent to the audience that we have here today. You will see there that all our programs start with a vision setting meeting. And that's a meeting where we include stakeholders, we include consumers. I personally reach out to several of the advocacy groups that are assigned to us as topic areas, right? That align to those topic areas to get a sense of what's needed that year. So when we receive the appropriation, we can actually solicit for what's going to impact the patients the most. Then we release our funding opportunities, keeping in mind that we can only release these funding opportunities once we have an appropriation, once the bill is signed. So that sometimes when we are in a continuing resolution really tightens up our timeline because we also have a period to execute those funds. So we try to maximize to leave the most amount of time that we can for researchers to apply, keeping in mind that we have to allow ourselves enough time so we can go through all the other milestones that you see listed there, which involve pre-application, the application receipt, peer review, and programmatic review. So there are two things that I would like to emphasize on this slide. The first one you see there on the left, the programmatic panel in brown there. And you can see that they will have input on all levels of the review process. Our programmatic panel is listed on our website. I invite you to go and take a look. Each program has their own programmatic panel. So if you click under PRMRP, you will see the individuals that actually make up this panel. And this is very important because these are going to be the folks that are ultimately going to be recommending for funding your proposals. The second thing that I would like to note is the timeline there. So you can see that by the time that we receive the appropriation and we go through all these milestones that I listed here until we get the funding recommendations and the investigator receives his notification letter, it can take us several months, right? So when you submit a proposal to us, the funds you will not receive the funds before then, let's say 9 months to a year. That is pretty much standard, and the way, because we are congressionally assigned each year, we can't really plan in advance or release the funding opportunities. So it does take a while for you to receive. So keep that in mind when you're drafting your statement of work, when you're drafting all the attachments that are needed to submit, to give yourself a buffer for that. Next slide. So I'm going to talk about the two-tier review process. I think I have, in broad strokes, I have given you a little bit of an overview of what it is. It's really a partnership between peer review and programmatic review, where we try to get the benefits of the peer review, really filter out those scientific proposals that have the most scientific merit, so the highest scoring ones, and those are the ones that are going to go to the second level of review, where ultimately we will make the funding recommendations. So it's really a partnership between these two, making sure that we can also fulfill congressional intent and the goals set forth by each program. Next slide. So talking about peer review, I think investigators are very familiar with peer review. It's an evaluation that's based on technical merit of an ideal proposal. So you will have a list of criteria that we are evaluating you against. This criteria, they are listed all in our funding opportunities, keeping in mind that they vary between each program, they vary between each funding opportunity. One thing that's important is that because of our topics can change, because of just the fluidity of our programs, we do not have a standing panel. So we are not the NIH, we don't have a Center for Scientific Review. Our proposals, they are reviewed by partners, by contractors, by us, that they set up these panels and recruit the best scientists to review, and the scientists that have the expertise to review the proposals that we're submitting. And the identities of the applicants, between applicants and reviewers and program staff, just a communication between them, that's something that we disallow. Like I said, we do not want to provide a competitive advantage to any applicant. If you have, there's a next click there, that's the only one. The list of our peer review participants, it's also published on our website, but we do that for previous years. This is a good way for you to go in and have an idea of the folks that are being recruited as part of this peer review panel. So for previous years, you will have that. You will not know for this year who was evaluating your proposal until we close the cycle, and then we release that again. Next slide. So now for the second level of review, which is programmatic review, we are here now evaluating, it's based on a comparison between the best proposals that we received. And here, these individuals, these are folks that are familiar with the program goals, with how we have to meet congressional intent, and they are making these recommendations based mostly on relative impact, relative innovation. And the list of criteria that they will be evaluating your proposal is also listed in our program announcement. So like I said, there is no pay line. It's not necessarily the highest scoring proposal that we had from scientific review that's going to be recommended for funding. Keeping in mind, again, that consumers, clinicians, there's all levels of expertise included in the programmatic panel, and we also add some ad hoc reviewers depending on the size of the program, so we can make sure that we are bringing all the expertise that's necessary to review them. The outcome would be then the funding recommendations. Next slide, please. So again, I just want to really highlight and emphasize this, that our consumers, they are the foundation of CDMRP. These are the folks that went to the Hill, that are really advocating for these funds. So we want to make sure that they are included. We want to make sure that they can participate and they have a voice. And they are involved in all cycles, all the way from they're a very important stakeholder for us. So all the way when we're drafting our funding opportunities, during pre-screening, programmatic review, and peer review, they are included in all levels of review. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to focus on the peer-reviewed medical research program, which is the program that I think most of you are interested and logged in today to listen about our funding opportunities. Next slide. So PRMRP started in 1999, so it was a few years later after that first program. And we received from Congress a direction to really support. Our language is different than other programs. It is very broad. But we do have, and it says, to support research of clear scientific merit and direct relevance to military health. And we'll discuss this in a little bit more detail. But we can only do that in specified topic areas. These topic areas, they vary year from year, but it is by law, it is mandated that the researcher must really address one of these topic areas. Next slide. So like I said, each year with our appropriation, we receive the language to fund research, the most meritorious research in these topic areas. This is an example for FY23, which is the cycle that we're working now. We have 50 total topic areas. Now, like I said, some of these topic areas vary. It is a compilation of efforts between either lobbying and then, but Congress ultimately puts this topic area. So it's a congressional decision to put them, to add them or to remove them. Some years, every year, we have some variation on them. In blue there, it's listed all the new topic areas for FY23. And in green, we have topic areas that were not part of the program, that were previously part of the program. They did not make it to the bill on FY22, and now they're making a return. And an example of that would be scleroderma and tuberculosis. Next slide. So for our strategic purposes and how we decide to run this program and make a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, and really execute the strategy and the vision that we have, which pertains to the program office to do that. We allocate these topic areas in different buckets that you see there. And these buckets, they align with the major areas of research, right? So we have buckets from autoimmune to respiratory health, rare diseases conditions. And we do this in a way that it makes our peer review and our programmatic review much more cohesive. We are evaluating those topic areas based in a panel of experts that have that type of background, and we're also looking at them in a very similar fashion, right? We're looking at autoimmune disease as opposed to comparing, let's say, celiac disease with pulmonary fibrosis. So this is something that is part of our strategic plan and our investment strategy. Next slide, please. So how do we execute our funds? Well, the first thing that we have to do is release our funding opportunities. And these are determined by, like I said, the programmatic panel, our stakeholders. We see what's needed, and we try to have the funding opportunities that will bring in the science that's needed for that year. This year for PRMRP, we have 6 funding opportunities. You can see there, they go all the way from Discovery Award, which is very innovative concepts. We go through team science, and all the way to our clinical trials, which are very competitive. These clinical trials, they do not have a direct cost limit. So it's something that the research community really appreciates, and we receive a lot of proposals for them. I'm going to talk in a little bit more detail about each one of these mechanisms. I think it's important for you as you're drafting your proposal to understand at least the intent behind these award mechanisms. And if we can go to the next slide. So let's start off with the first 3. So you will see that the first one is the Discovery Award. The intent of this award mechanism is really to bring in that high risk, that innovative idea research. The direct cost limit is 200K. So we are not looking here for preliminary data. We are looking for something, for a brand new idea that you don't even have to be in the field to actually get funding for this, okay? The eligibility for all of these award mechanisms are listed there. This is really, we're looking for that game changer, that idea. The intent of this award mechanism, which is something that we try to really highlight for the research community. It's not a smaller award. It is not a portion of an R01. We are looking for a brand new idea, something that will change paradigm, that will shift the way that we're doing things, that are still very early and very mature, but that with some seed funding, that will actually bring it to the next level. Our next award mechanism is the investigator-initiated award, and we have 2 options there. It's 1.6 million for direct cost if you come as a single investigator. You have the option under this award mechanism to partner with another investigator. That would be a partnering PI option. You see there, PPIO, and the direct cost for that is 2 million. And really what we're looking from this partnership, if you choose to go that route, you have to really, there's going to be a statement in your proposal that's going to really state to us why this partnership is necessary. What are you achieving with this partnership that you wouldn't achieve on your own? We can support from basic science all the way to translational. And this is the award mechanism that mostly relates to an R01 of the NIH. But again, here we're looking for impact, even if it is mechanistic studies, something that will impact how in the future you should be able to articulate how that will impact patient care. Our next award mechanism is the Technology Therapeutic Award. We have 2 funding levels. This is a product-driven award mechanism, okay? So the first funding level depends on where you are on that development, and the funding level 2, we expect that by the end of that, you will be able to have an IND submitted with the FDA. We are looking here to really bring products. We can fund preclinical work, toxicity studies, GMP production. So this is really a product-driven award. Now you see there at the bottom, letter of intent is required for these mechanisms. So whether you apply for PRMRP or for any other program at CDMRP, our application process is a two-step process. You will either need to submit a letter of intent or a pre-proposal, okay? And then you will invite your full proposal. There's a major difference between this. The letter of intent is really something that we use it for our administrative purposes. As I mentioned before, we do not have standing panels, so we need to know ahead of time before you submit your full proposal what topic area you're addressing, a few highlights of your proposal. This is a one-page document that we require, so you can so we can start setting up our review panel. Okay, and what I would like to emphasize here is that this is not optional. So keep that in mind, because many times you receive a full proposal from a researcher that did not submit a letter of intent, and unfortunately we cannot accept that. So for all our mechanisms, you're going to have to submit a letter of intent or a pre-proposal. The other larger mechanisms, they require a pre-proposal. I'm going to talk about them on the next slide, but for these, a letter of intent is sufficient. Next slide, please. So here we have our larger award mechanisms. So I'm going to start by the Focus Program Award. This is a team science. We want to see several groups of researchers come together to address an overarching challenge. The direct cost limit for that is 7.2 million. This is also this has met many needs in the field. It's a very popular mechanism, and it's a way to bring multidisciplinary research for topic areas that actually require expertise on several other areas. Then we have our clinical trial. The clinical trial, you can apply to us in two phases. The first one would be the planning phase. That's an option that you have to apply, and here we commit to giving you 500K so you can finalize your approvals, get any regulatory documentation that you need from your from the IRB, any approvals that you need from the IRB, final regulatory documentations from the FDA. And then we will fund the full clinical trial as an option once you have achieved the milestones set forth in the planning phase. All right. We will need to assess the budget for the planning phase and the clinical trial. So this is something that you will have to submit. We need to know to what we are committing in case we actually do end up funding the option trial. Or you can come in as a full clinical trial. For that, you will need already to have your IND at hand. The IND needs to be approved. This is not the mechanism for someone that still needs amendments for IND. But the advantage of this, we are willing to take your idea however it can be. This is why you don't put a direct cost limit to our clinical trials. Some trials might cost 3 million, some trials might cost 10 million. So we're looking here at the idea and at the budget. What is it necessary for you to complete that study? Both of these award mechanisms require a pre-proposal, and then you will either receive an invite or a non-invite letter, okay? And we do this, we have mixed feelings about this. The community has mixed feelings about this. They would rather sometimes just submit the full proposal. But we do this because these are very complex proposals. So they have more than 100 pages. We're going to request for a lot of attachments. So we don't want the researcher to go through all the hoops of drafting that long document when the programmatic panel doesn't have an intention of funding it. So the main idea is to really minimize the burden on the PI and to just invite the ones that really have a chance of competing that year and that meets the needs of our program. A pre-proposal is usually a 4-page document. We're going to ask you a few things, and all that is described in our funding opportunities. I'm going to show you where to find it. But we're just asking you to briefly tell us what you're going to do. Keep in mind that the programmatic panel will be reviewing that pre-proposal, and they will be the ones making a determination whether or not to invite it. So again, I encourage you to take a look at those individuals, speak in a little bit broader terms, make sure that the impact, the military relevance is clearly articulated on your pre-proposal so you can get an invitation to submit your full proposal. Now, an invitation doesn't mean that you're going to be funded. It means that we are interested in looking at the full proposal. And our last award mechanism, this is very new this year for PRMRP. It's the first year that we're putting it out there. I'm very excited for this. I think we're meeting a niche that we weren't really able to fund before. Here, with this award mechanism, we're looking to receive all clinical research and clinical trials that are really non-FDA regulated. We have a lot of topic areas that are looking into mental health, sometimes apps. So this is something that we created this so they wouldn't have to compete directly with the traditional clinical trials with biological interventions. For this award mechanism, the lifestyle and health and behavioral health interventions, we are only require, again, a letter of intent. So you will not need to wait for an invitation to submit, but we do, again, as I mentioned, for our administrative purposes, we do need a letter of intent. Next slide. So for all these funding opportunities that I listed, for all the 6, 3 things are required. The first one is the military health statement. This is an attachment that you will submit to us that will be only reviewed by the programmatic panel. And with this, I encourage you to really apply a lot of grantsmanship and say and clearly articulate how your research aligns with military health. We have some examples there. It's included there, like dual use capacity that would benefit the civilian population and needs related to military health. Some aspects or target or some aspects of the disease that have direct relevance to military health. This doesn't apply to all our topic areas. Some of our topic areas are disqualifying for military service. So this really depends on which topic area we apply. And also, one of the things that I want to highlight to this group is also the contribution to family readiness of service members. Sometimes, even if you have a family member with a disease or a condition, that really affects mission readiness. And so that's a good way also of tying in your military health statement. I will say that the advocacy groups can be a huge resource for you on this. They are the ones that also drafted language, how the language was written, so the topic area was included under PRMRP. So I do encourage you to reach out to the advocacy groups and to get some examples of how this was, of the language that was used. So again, like I mentioned, the proposals, they must address one of the PRMRP topic areas and one of the PRMRP's portfolio specific strategic goals, which I'm going to discuss in the next couple of slides. So here we have, this is just an example of the neuroscience portfolio strategic goals. Like I said, all our topic areas, they're allocated in these larger buckets, right? And peripheral neuropathy was allocated to the neuroscience portfolio. Each of these buckets that you see, that you saw on my previous slide, each one of them has strategic goals that we developed and we devised with advocacy groups, with all our stakeholders, with the programmatic panel, making sure that we were able to solicit the research that would best meet the needs of the topic areas that were assigned to us. These strategic goals, they align under the continuum of care. You can see there, they were allocated also under the continuum of care, foundational studies, prevention, diagnosis. And you can see that they are very broad. And they are broad for a reason. We do not want to exclude any of the topic areas, but still ask for the research that we really need and are targeting for. So each word in those strategic goals, they really point to something that we're looking at. So carefully make sure that your topic area is using one of these goals and how it is really addressing these goals. All applications that come to us, they must address one strategic goal in one topic area. They're broad. You can use it as mix and match. Some of these goals are going to be more for other topic areas in that bucket, but some of these goals are very broad where you can see your research would fit under any one of them. Next slide. And this is just a continuation of it. Like I said, we're looking at the continuum of care. So we showed foundational prevention. Here we have treatment and epidemiology. So these are the studies that we're looking for. These are the topic areas that are allocated to your science. So really make sure that you are addressing the goals and the topic areas.
Hey, Cecilia, this is Lindsay. We just lost audio on you.
Really?
Yep. Now I got you.
Okay. All right. Perfect.
Could you maybe restate what you just said over the last 10 to 20 seconds. I apologize.
It was after I switched to this slide.
It was just right around that. Yeah. So if you could restart, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Right. No, absolutely. So this is just a continuation of the previous slide. And like I said, all our strategic goals for the neuroscience portfolio, they were developed under the continuum of care. So here you see for treatment and for epidemiology. Like I said, these goals, they're broad for a reason. They are meant to be used as like some sort of a mix and match between the topic areas and the strategic goals that you have for these portfolios. But really pay attention to each individual word that we have there, because it does imply what it is, the type of research that we are trying to bring in. Some of these goals might be a little bit more specific. That's because we needed a goal that's clearly stated what we were looking for some topic areas, but most of them, like I said, they are broad. You will see that your research can fit under any one of them. I do encourage you to just, like I said, how well you are addressing this goal is going to be a criteria that you're going to be evaluated against. So do articulate how you are addressing this goal. This is something that's very important when you start working on your proposal. Next slide. This is just another example of the infectious disease. I thought that I had removed that, so we can skip it. But with this, I can actually point out that each of our portfolios have their own strategic goals. All right. Next slide. Next slide. All right. So we spoke a little bit about how our peer review works, and here I'm just going to emphasize the specific points for PRMRP. Like I said, each funding opportunity will have their peer review criteria. And you can see there, if you can click one more time on this slide, you will see an example of our peer review criteria for one of our funding opportunities. This is probably the investigator initiated. There's a list there of scored criteria that the peer reviewers are going to be evaluating your proposal against. So it's research strategy and feasibility, impact, transition plan, regulatory strategy, and personnel. Under each one of them, you're going to have a sub-bullets that clearly explain how you will be evaluated. So a good way, one of the tips that we like to give our investigators is really to start your proposal here. If you don't know where to start your proposal, start here. Make sure that everything that you write addresses each one of these. Another tip that we have is ask for a colleague that knows the work to evaluate it and see how well you're scoring and how well you're articulating all of the criteria that you are being evaluated. Now, keep in mind that for each program, for each funding opportunity, for each one of those 6 that I shared with you, they are going to have their own, right? We can't use the same criteria to evaluate a clinical trial that we would use for a discovery award. And many times here they're listed in decreasing order of importance. For some award mechanisms, research strategy and feasibility is not even one of the first ones up there. We're looking much more at innovation and impact. So keep in mind that you are hitting those points before you submit your proposal. Next slide. And here I'm listing the criteria that the programmatic review, the programmatic panel will be looking at. So basically, theirs is a little bit more succinct. They're looking at the adherence to the intent of the award mechanisms, the relevance to the topic areas, the relevance to the strategic goals that I just described, the relevance to military health. This is why your military health statement is very important, and our portfolio composition. We need to make sure that we're filling in the gaps that we are still not funding. So this is why sometimes the most meritorious proposal is not going to be the scientifically meritorious proposal is not going to be the one recommended for funding. We have a panel of reviewers that are going to be looking at the program's intent and how we are trying to meet congressional intent in that. Next slide. So like I mentioned, our programmatic panel is actually listed in our website. And I really do, I know I've said this several times, but I really do encourage you to go and take a look at the individuals that are composing this panel. Next slide. Here's just, you can feel free, Lindsay, to distribute these slides. It's just a table that summarizes which award mechanisms have a letter of intent, which award mechanisms have a pre-proposal. You can see the majority of our mechanisms just have a letter of intent. The due dates on that, so the first one that's fast approaching is March 29th for our Discovery Award, and then your full application would be due several weeks later, right? And we do that, like I said, to start standing up our peer review panels. The only two award mechanisms that require a pre-proposal is going to be our Focus Program Award or Clinical Trial. The due dates are written there, and you will know if you were invited or not to submit by June 17th. Next slide. And here I'm just going to close off this briefing with some additional tips, some resources that you can find on our website that many people find it very useful for a successful application. Next slide. So if I can leave you with just one of this 40-minute presentation with just one tip, it would be read the announcement carefully, okay? I know that our program announcements, they are long, they are lengthy, but they are long and lengthy for a reason. Like I said, we do not work with investigators to tailor their research. This program announcement, trust me, it has been reviewed by several layers. It has been reviewed by lawyers. It has every information that you need there. I understand it can be a little bit tedious. Many of our researchers, they read the first 4 pages and they're like, okay, I got this. I got the intent of the award mechanism. But I encourage you to read every little footnote with care, because you will find all the information that you need there. And again, like I said, keep in mind the program intent, keep in mind the strategic goals of your portfolio that you're applying. If you have different research that you are aiming to apply to another portfolio that's not the neuroscience portfolio, as I showed you, there are other strategic goals. So keep in mind and make sure that you clearly articulate that and that you are hitting all the notes that you need to hit with the review criteria that are listed in that program announcement. Next slide. So we've spoken about this, the relevance, impact. I really want to say this, it's very important that you articulate free of jargon, right? Because keeping in mind that you're going to have consumers on the panel. So propose solutions that are going to be important to solve problems in the field that actually impact patients. Clearly articulate translatability. Even if you're looking at mechanistic studies that we fund under IRA, how will this work make a difference? Innovation is huge. We want to fund something new. We are comfortable with high risk. We are comfortable with high risk ideas. So clearly articulate the rationale of why you're proposing this and why this is new. And feasibility, this is not something that I need to really hit on. A team of seasoned scientists. Research strategies feasibility is what's mostly evaluated at the NIH. You're more comfortable articulating that, but don't forget to also hit the notes there, keeping in mind that we will have, depending on the award mechanisms, you're going to have clinicians, and they will look into all that review criteria that I mentioned before. Next slide. So planning and timelines. This is very important, okay? Absent a huge disaster of nature, absent a hurricane, an earthquake, the DoD does not provide a grace period. I know that it is expected in the field. I know that many funding organizations, after they reach their deadline, they extend it for a week or two. This will not happen with the DoD. The few times I've seen it happen, it's because we had to provide some mitigation for a hurricane, and still that wasn't a law that we were allowed to give. So it's basically like 2 days, 3 days. So keep that in mind. You will have to submit your pre-proposal, your letter of intent through EBRAP, which is our platform, our system, and then you will have to submit your full proposal through grants.gov. Many of you are going to be working with the business office in your organization, so keep that in mind. Sometimes it can be a difficult process. Do not leave it for last minute. We receive, I can tell you, each year, several, it is heartbreaking, several proposals that come in 1 minute after the deadline. We are not allowed to receive them. So do not leave this for last minute, the submission of your proposal. And grantsmanship, right? Like I said,
that goes a long way. You're going to have to clearly articulate the military relevance. Your advocacy group can help you with that. And keeping in mind, you will see throughout our program,
our funding opportunity, the programmatic panel, they do not receive all attachments, right? They are going to count heavily on the summary statement. So the goal of the programmatic panel is not to re-review the science. It is really with the summary statement. They will only receive a few of the attachments. So make sure that on those attachments that's written, that's going to be reviewed by the programmatic panel, that you are hitting the notes with the criteria that they are looking for. Okay, next slide. And I just want to say, like I said, on our website, there's plenty of information available. You can take a look at our program books. We have highlights. You can see we have research highlights, consumer highlights, not only for PRMRP, for other programs. But if you go into, if you click on PRMRP, you will be able to find a lot of information that I think just by you reading them, you will get a sense of what the organization stands for and what it is that we're looking for. We have a webinar series that are posted on our website. Researchers find that very helpful. I know you have this webinar here from me today, but those are a little bit more broad. They're directed for mechanisms in general. So I do think it's worth taking a look at. Next slide. Like I said, here are webinars that we have listed. You have one there, Team Science Funding Opportunity. This is not specific for PRMRP, but it will give you a lot of good tips on how to improve your proposal, especially if you're applying for our Team Science Award, which is our Focus Program Award. Next slide. On our website as well, there is an icon there that you can see. I highlighted it there in yellow, that you can sign up for a listserv in eBRAP. And you can also do that through eBRAP. And this will allow, once you click on that, you'll be able to choose which programs you want to receive information. This is a very good way for you to keep informed what's going out, when our funding opportunities might be released. Sometimes we release a pre-announcement if we have time, if our timeline permits. But you will surely be notified of when our funding opportunities are released. So this is a good place for you to really subscribe and start receiving the information that we put out there. Next slide. And here I'll pause, and I am ready to take questions. I hope that this was useful to you. And like I said, if you can't send a question today, feel free to contact me. Lindsay can share my email.
Yes, thank you so much, Cecilia. We actually don't have any questions that have come in through this, through your program. I'll give it another minute or so just to see if anyone has any outstanding questions that we can address. But I found it to be an extremely thorough presentation, so I'm actually not surprised that we don't have too many questions.
Hey, Cecilia, this is Mark Beath. I just typed something into our chat. I thought it might be good also to talk a little bit about how an individual can become a peer reviewer for PRMRP if they're not going to submit an application this year.
Great, Mark. Thank you so much for reminding me of that.
Sure.
So let's start. I know that this is not the audience for that, but we do take in reviewers, either consumer reviewers or peer reviewers. For the consumer reviewers, if you want to be part of a peer review, there's an icon on our website that you can just submit an application. If you would like to be a scientist, a scientific peer reviewer, that is something that I can also definitely, you can reach out to me and I will route your name. Like I said, we are not the ones, we don't do our peer review in-house, but I will route your name to the to my colleagues that are standing up those panels, and I'll express your interest. And they are the ones responsible for vetting, but still it's something that I think if not, at least it's a great opportunity for you to see the types of discussions that go behind these panels.
And if anyone's interested, they can also reach out directly to me because then I coordinate that application process as well. So I just wanted to make note of that we're also actively involved in helping to recruit peer reviewers and get them in line for those types of reviews.
And I remember what I was going to say. I lost my train of thought there.
Yeah.
But so if you are submitting yourself to become a peer reviewer. I know it's a catch-22, right? Because you're not going to be able to submit a proposal that year. But sometimes if you have a proposal in the making and you don't know what you're going to submit for a couple of years now, this is a great opportunity for you to be a part of it. And we can actually ensure that we have the appropriate expertise on those panels. And you can see that your colleagues are actually going to be reviewing your proposals.
Great, thank you, Cecilia. We did have a question that came in while you were saying a little bit more about the peer review process, but someone is curious, does the CDMRP recognize MPI applications?
MPI, do you mind spelling out the acronym?
The acronym was not spelled out in the question, so perhaps the individual who typed it in can quickly clarify. Multiple PI. So do you guys recognize when there are more than one principal investigator?
So as I mentioned, we have our team science, and those are going to be, we can have several co-PIs, right? However, it's still under one award. You will receive one vehicle to fund you, okay? Now, we can fund the other projects separately, but it's still under one award mechanism. And I know I'm emphasizing this is a lot of bureaucracy, but it does make a difference. The only award mechanism that we offer a co-PI, it's not multiple PI, it's a co-PI, is the investigator initiated award. And that you will have two separate awards. It's going to be an award for one PI, and then it's going to be an award for the second PI. Now, like I said, the team science, you're just going to have one prime PI. So if you're looking for different notices of, if you're looking for different vehicles to fund one PR or the other, that would have to be the investigator initiated award.
Okay. And another person just wanted to confirm their understanding was correct based off of your conversation from earlier, that there is no program officer at the CDMRP. Is that correct?
No, we have several programs, especially a program like PRMRP. We have a team of 10, 12 science officers that work with me. But the problem is, when we have our funding opportunities released and we have open funding opportunities, we cannot tailor your investigation. We can't answer specific questions about your proposal. So, oh, should I write the goal like this? Should I put this? Is my timeline? This is not, because like I said, we try to not foster competitive advantage. This is not something that we can do. However, as soon as your award is recommended for funding, throughout the period of performance of your award, there is going to be reports and reviews, and you'll have a science officer, which is the program officer, that's going to be really shepherding you through and answering all your questions. Does that answer the question?
I think so. Yes, it does. Thank you. Great. Well, Cecilia, thank you so very much for this presentation. For everyone that's watching live or similarly watching us later, when the recording gets sent out within the next day or so, we're also going to make sure that this slide deck is available. And if any questions do arise, feel free to reach out either directly to Cecilia, directly to me at the Foundation for Peripheral Neuropathy, and I'd be happy to help route accordingly. I also want to extend my gratitude to Mark Veith. He is fantastic and helps a lot with the Foundation's advocacy efforts. So Mark, thank you for joining us and for also asking that one question to get us started with the Q&A.
If I could get in one more word to the researchers that are listening to this, please do apply for this funding. There is a lot of work that is done on the advocacy end by our grassroots patients, families, to get this condition renewed every year in the Defense Appropriations Act. So we need the scientific community to apply for these grants. So thank you.
100%. Thank you, Mark. And again, thank you everyone for joining us today. And we'll look forward to getting those applications in and getting some more research funded for peripheral neuropathy. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.